This show was a real um, education for me. Um, it really is an exquisite show from a very unique group of early Renaissance painters, artists who kind of set the stage for the next 200 years in a way. Um, the show itself, let's see, there's more than 100 objects in the show. Um, and the rise of painting, it examines this exceptional moment at the dawn of the Italian Renaissance and a, a pivotal role that these Sienese artists played in that, including uh, Duccio, um, Petro, and Ambrogio Lorenzetti and Simone Martini. They really, um, it was really half a decade where they set a certain kind of direction um, that really was followed up over the next 200 years in the development of the Renaissance. Um, it was really, this show is really a kind of a fresh perspective on what had not been. One thinks of the focus of the Renaissance as in Florence, and yet these Sienese painters had a great contribution to give. Um, and Duccio was really the catalyst, the innovator. Um, Florence is often positioned in the center of the Renaissance, but the influence of these painters can't be underestimated at this point, for me anyway. And I think for other art historians. If you look at this image that's up on the screen right now, you notice that there's sort of a green cast to a number of the figures in there. They used to prepare their boards, their panels with a kind of earthy green tone. So it when some of the surface paint kind of fades or wears away a bit, that green sort of comes through. Um, but if you look at these pieces, they're very vibrant colors. This blue is lapis lazuli. Um, they are egg tempera paintings. They did not, oil paint was not invented at that time. Um, People did uh, basically um, murals directly on the wall with plaster. So that was one way of approaching it. And these panels were all painted with egg tempera. So, well, I'll talk more about that later. Um, but what I'd like to say is there's a dynamic in the Florentine painters, its scale, its dimension, its volume. Giotto. All right, we'll switch here to here. And here you see on the right a Giotto painting. So the volumes are very pronounced. You see the roundness of the forms. They take up space. They occupy that space. This is very different from the Byzantine icon, which is very flat. And I'll show you one of those in a moment. On the left is the Madonna and Child by Duccio, and this is it's a really beautiful little painting. I actually I'm gonna I'm gonna zoom in on this and get going with that. Let's see. Come on. There we go. Wait a minute. There we are. Okay. Um, what I want to say is that there's a relationship between these figures that if you look at what goes on in the Giotto, they're really not interacting directly. There's this angel coming down from the sky. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of things happening here, but these figures are not directly interacting with one another. Um, and that's not to take anything away from Giotto. I like Giotto, but this, on the other hand, is a very different scene. Um, and the actual um, uh, frame and integration of the frame and the patterning incised into the panel. All of these are prepared. There's gold leaf in there, and you can see these incised patterns on the background. So So more than any other Italian city north of Rome, Siena benefited from its position on the French route, basically. Um, what happened was people came down from the north and they had to go straight through the city. There was one road that led through. And so anybody who was coming from Northern Europe through France would come through Siena. So passing through the city's gates, this route served as a major conduit for pilgrims, merchants, dignitaries, popes, kings, emperors between Rome and points north. Um, Sienese artists encountered objects brought through these travelers. So, basically there was um, the trade coming in to southern Italy would go north through Siena, and the travelers coming down to go to Rome, the pilgrims would travel through Siena.
Larry, I don't see
Yes,
on the map where Siena is.
it is. Do you
Oh,
see
I
my
see it
pointer?
now. Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. And here we have um, what I was talking about, a Byzantine um, icon. You see how flatly it's painted. I mean, it's an exquisite icon, the beautiful quality of the surface and all of that, but very flat, and there's really not the kind of relationship between Mary and the child. There isn't that Madonna and child business going on there. Now, in this ivory that came down from France, which again, it's a small object. It's 7 by 3 by 3 inches. The icon itself is 10 by 7 inches. These are things you can hold in your hands. You can carry with you as a pilgrim. So this enthroned virgin and child, the relationship between them is really beautiful and exquisite. There's that gesture there, and you feel the warmth between them. And this would have been one of the things that kind of influenced the Sienese. They would see this Gothic sculpture. And this piece was polychromed. It was painted, so the paint has worn off, though there's some traces here and there on there. Um, okay. And again, um, this is Duccio, and you you can see in this fragment of fabric the patterning that's in there, and then I looked at that and looked at this Duccio and said, there you go, this Iranian cloth, this Iranian fabric, influenced, or something like it would have been the influence on the pattern that was painted inside the Duccio painting. Again, exquisitely small. You could hold it in your hands. It's 9 by 12 inches. The backs of these, I wish I had some shots of them, but the backs of these pieces are also beautifully um, gilded and are almost like abstract paintings themselves. Um, Many of the pieces which were inside the cathedrals were meant to be viewed both sides and would be used in processionals and things like that. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to say is that the gown that Mary is wearing, um, it would have been that bright lapis lazuli that was in that first image that we were looking at. It they darken with age. Um, but the one thing that I want to point out is this edging, this fringe, this linear element that's going through the gown that kind of traces the volume of the figure is in gold leaf. And the background, all the backgrounds are gold leaf. They're painted over um, a gold ground. Okay. All right. So um, this is a big one. Basically, this is a monumental altarpiece. It was at the time the largest altarpiece created. Um, it is, let's see if I've got the numbers here. Um, it's about it's 15 by 16 feet. So you have to imagine this inside a cathedral with 150 flickering candles at various levels in the piece. I mean, look at the carpentry that went into this thing. And you have to imagine this is gold leaf, so it's slightly uneven, and the surface when the candles were in front of it would have been really magic and gave more dimensionality to the figures because that background would be kind of glowing. So really interesting. Again, you know, that blue that Mary's wearing would have been a much brighter blue. Um, and then there's all these small panels. Now this piece, did not stay intact completely. Um, um, and they brought together a lot of these pieces for this show. Okay, and here's close up of Mary. And there's, let's see, what do I want to say about this? The detail, I approach this as a painter. So, people in some Bible study would be able to figure out who some of these characters are. But I do see John the Baptist off to the right in his hair shirt covered with the cloak. Um, and there's other figures in there. Um, but this, this is the front of the altarpiece. The back of the altarpiece looked like this. So there's a lot of narrative going on here, since many people could not read back then. So these stories were told in pictures. Um, and again, this would all have been illuminated by candles. And here's a detail: Christ taken prisoner. Um, there's this full cast of characters here. This drama that's going on. Um, the color on these pieces is so rich, that red really glows. Um, hard to tell, that the figure with the knife in the foreground was probably a much brighter green back in the day he was painted. Um, but there, you see the disciples kind of slinking off to the right, slinking off stage. Um, but also notice again that beautiful kind of, well, let's see if I can zoom in, that glowing line in Christ's robe, that is it's either silver or gold leaf. And again, basically the robe would have been that bright blue, lapis lazuli. This is probably a good time to talk a little bit more about um, the the technique. This egg tempera, basically what egg tempera is you take the pigment, the ground pigment, and mix it with egg yolks. So you couldn't do large batches at once. You had to do a, enough so that you could paint what you were going to paint, but it would dry fairly quickly, and you couldn't really bring it back after a certain point. So that's kind of the technique. So they would get, lapis lazuli was a very expensive. It had to be imported from Persia. It was very valuable. So when they used it for significant figures like Christ and Mary. Um, okay. But it really, the gold leaf really makes these paintings sparkle. It's just, it's everywhere. Um, all right. So again, the difference between what was going on in Florence, this Cimabue uh, has a certain kind of monumentality, but the difference between Siena and Florence is obvious between these two. Um, the Look at the fluidity and emotional connection in the Martini painting on the right. There's a monumentality in the Cimabue, but they're all facing us, and there's a relationship going on between Mary and the child, and the Christ has given us a little sideward glance, but uh, the image itself is really exquisite. Those shape relationships are really quite beautiful. Okay. As Asian silks with small, dense patterns in gold were part of the international trade that flourished under the Mongols, and most known examples survive in European church treasuries. Um, this piece is part of a liturgical vestment associated with Pope Benedict, 1304. Um, Textiles such as these were depicted in, um, well, Martini's Annunciation, which I'll show you in a second. Um, but you can see the this French piece that actually has that kind of brocade, that beautiful patterning. Maybe I'll even do a zoom in for a moment on this because it's worth looking at. It's beautiful stuff. What's up with that? These two bearded guys. Okay. I hadn't even noticed that until I closed in. Ah, so this is what I was talking about. If you look at, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to zoom in. This martini, you can see this incised patterning that's in the altarpiece. And if we go back to this, you can see, how that kind of the patterns in the fabric really kind of translate into these panels. Now, again, this psychological stuff, this little psychodrama that's going on here. I mean, this is the Annunciation, this angel's coming down and saying, "Hey, Mary, it's time," and she doesn't look any too thrilled about the whole thing right now. It's I don't know what your relationships with angels are about, but I'd be pretty nervous if one came to visit me. Um, so the but the carpentry, the incredible workmanship, the craftsmanship that went into these things is incredible. Um, Really, really lovely piece. And the angel is holding the laurel, so it's the knowledge of the upcoming event, and the lilies in the back are purity. So there we go. Ah, so intended for private contemplation and devotion of its owner, this palm-sized ivory diptych illustrates both the reward of salvation and the consequence of damnation. The left wing represents the coronation of the Virgin. At the bottom, the retinue of saved souls, including a mendicant friar, a king, a pope, and possibly a deacon, is ushered up the ladder to the celestial beyond. And on the right actually is the lost souls really down at the bottom. They're being swallowed up. Um, and this is tiny. This thing is 5 by 5 by 3/4 or so. It's a tiny thing. Um, so they could take it with them and have have their own shrine wherever they went. Um, this was French, again. So I'm going to step back for a second and just do a little history, because basically one of the reasons why so many of these pieces are focused on the Virgin Mary is, in fact, um, Florence and Siena. Siena was under siege by a Florentine army in the late 1200s, and the city almost fell to the Florentines, um, and they really um, took Mary as the patron of the city, and really prayed to the Virgin Mary to save them from this siege. And the Florentines were finally driven away. Um, if you, I had an aerial shot. I wish I had it in the thing where you could actually see how Siena is situated, and it was down in a valley below where the battle was taking place, so you could see the actual battle taking place from the city. Um, would have been a little unnerving. Um, so they really, there's a lot of this Virgin Mary business going on. But this one is Pietro Lorenzetti, who is another one of the painters that I'm going to focus on. That is the focus of this show. This panel has both gold and silver leaf surfaces, further decorated with punch work and tooling that would shimmer against the reflected candlelight of a church interior. It was one part of a larger multi-paneled altarpiece with a Madonna and child image at its core. It's a beautiful, again, that the beautiful patterning in the dress. Ah, and this one, well, I love this one. So, take a look at this family dynamic. Basically, the rebellious youth, Christ, the rebellious youth. Um, Mary's a little green. Well, that may be, as I said, that the paint has worn off, but it's a little green in this. And Joe's there trying to reason with this lad, uh, and the image of the Christ seems pretty set in his ways. The arms crossed. He's dug his heels in. So it's kind of a timeless primal scene. The other thing I wanted to point out in this beautiful little painting is the wonderful color. And here the blue of lapis lazuli has remained really vibrant. And so you can see that in Christ's gown and in Mary, and that beautiful purple. So, you know, basically one of the nods to Florence is this sense of volume, these folds, really emphasize the roundness of the figures and all of that. Um, but the interaction within this, let me see if I'm going to zoom in, because what the heck, we want to see this. Get a look at the expressions on these guys. uh, Beautiful, beautiful pattern. The frame itself, but the look on Mary's face. What are you doing? Um, I love this piece. You know, it's just really a wonderful little psychodrama. Okay. And again, these really gorgeous shapes. Um, Martini was very, very talented. I love his work a lot. You know, I just feel like, you know, okay. So the shape relationships within the Madonna and Child are really beautiful. I mean, anatomically, there's liberties being taken, but the flow of forms is so lovely that it just totally, you know, who cares if the fingers are too long or the this or the that? The shapes are so beautiful in relationship to each other. Again, with St. Andrew, you know, this guy is about 10 feet tall if you take what those arms are about. But hey, uh, I'm fine with it. So is Matisse. He took some liberties with uh, anatomical proportions himself. So these are the kinds of panels that would be taken up and used in processionals, and these are the ones that I wish I had the backs of because the backs of them are really beautiful too. Okay, and um, this Annunciation is really, you know, again, really gorgeous. What you're seeing on the right is an X-ray of the underdrawing that is under this painting. So basically there were changes of positions, there were decisions that were made. You know, in the drawing, you see Mary kind of turning her back away from the angel bringing this message. And you see the angel leaning in a lot more in the drawing, and we end up with this very different scene. Okay, and this piece, this fragment of fabric, again, take a look at the pattern, the those rosettes in the center and all that, and look at the shapes in the top, up in the arches, and the flowers that are in there. The other thing that I wanted to point out here is something that's been missing in a lot of these pieces is perspective. And here we have the first signs of one point perspective anyway. Those how the size of the floor tiles diminishes as it goes off into the distance. So this is something which was kind of like very rudimentary at this stage of the game. Becomes very important to the high Renaissance, but um, at this point, it's you know very primitive. Um, it's not 2 point perspective. Oh, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. So here's another Petro Lorenzetti. Um, and um, they integrated the monumentality of Florence, but that interactive, unique personality of Siena is there. again, these kind of elongated, attenuated figures. The Christ is, you know, he's one heck of a basketball player. That's it's very elongated. Um, ah, and here is Pietro Lorenzetti and Ambrosio, both do, doing the crucifixion, um, where Mary's grief is full in Pietro's version. Um, Ambrosio's Mary is a fallen leaf. It's deflated. The spirit is flown out of her with the loss. Interesting. They were, they were not competitors. They really played off of each other, and their personalities show through in the pieces. And to go forward 100 years, this is Fra Angelica on the left, wonderful Florentine painter, and monk. Um, and the positions of the figures, the leaning back, the diminishing scale of the figures as they go off in the distance, the size of the angels off in the distance, all set up a certain kind of dynamic. And there's Mary in the foreground, cast down. Now, Frau Angelica would have been influenced by the Sienese. He would have seen them because um, uh, Marini and Duccio, and I believe the Lorenzettis were all in the Uffizi, were all in the museum access in Florence. Um, okay, and here going forward again, this is 1455, and this is Chiara della Francesca, and you can see the full-blown perspectival business going on in this flagellation. Um, Basically, the architectural stuff, the receding lines, it's 2-point perspective now, where as things go up into the air, they get smaller. As things go off into the distance, they get smaller. The scale of the figures recede and get smaller as they go off in the distance. And here's a Madonna and Child with 9 angels. This is one of Duccio's students. Again, used for private devotion. The radiant beauty of the Virgin's court, enhanced by the ornamental details, contrasts with the tragic drama of the crucifixion, thus offering the worshipers 2 different images to meditate on. Basically, the panels were up next to each other. Um, his master was Duccio, and he studied with him. We don't know who Duccio studied with, but obviously he was an innovator, and these other painters emulated that. Now, the Black Plague was around. So what happened was the plague came to Siena and devastated half the population. And all 4 of these painters died. Here's one last St. Matthew. There are a bunch of these, and I could have put all of them in, but I figured, you know what? One good one. Here we have it. Martini's just really subtle and beautiful. The kind of brushwork and modeling in it is just really exquisite, and the whole show is. So I am going to move on to this Mary Sully, Native Modern. She was a Native American, and she combined Native American patterns with abstract form in the 20s to the 40s. That's when she was working. She was really self-taught, and there's a beautiful show on at the Met, only on until the 12th, where the Siena show is on till the 26th of January, but this show is only on until the 12th. So I figured I'd bring it to your attention. Get to the Met if you can. And this show, the Mandalas, is also only on until the 12th. This is the same time period as what was going on in Siena, only a very ferociously different place, very different planet. So, um, there are a couple of really great lectures, um, done by the one of the curators of the show, and that's Sunday at the Met, Siena, and basically the title of the show. And then there's another one that's from the New York Studio School. And if you don't know about the New York Studio School, I'm telling you, you got to find out about this, because they do all these lectures by artists, by art historians, by curators, by art critics on various subjects of the contemporary art, but also historic art. And this lecture was really, really wonderful. That I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name, but it's really worth the time to take a look at this. I got a lot out of it, and I just shared a lot of that with you. So the next one we're going to do is a holiday present for all of us, which is, there was a Bonnard show that I missed that came by and was at the Phillips collection, but I'm going to do it anyway because I love Bonnard so much and want to share that. So
You do,
that's
Larry. You love it so much. I work with Larry, and it's
it.
amazing. It's art is our conversation. That's what we talk about. So, yeah, what
Okay.
did you want to say?
Oh, that's it. I'm done.
I done. Okay, everyone. Thank you for coming. We wish you a happy holiday. The next one is the
Yes.
25th, right? 26th,
26th.
26th, right?
26th
The 26th.
or something
And
like that. Wait a minute, wait a minute. It's whatever. No, it's the 27th. It's whatever the Friday is after Christmas.
hold on, let's just get it right. It's the
Yep.
27th. It's the
Yes.
27th. So while you're just at home,
Recovering.
relaxing, this would be perfect to do. So we hope you will see you the 27th, and have a wonderful holiday. And thank you all. Bye, everyone.